James, why don't we start with a little bit about your current business, sort of what are you doing, what's keeping you focused, and when you joined, what was the business when you joined, and where do you think it's headed?
Yep, no worries. Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for giving up your Friday afternoon. I'm sure many of you are off to Tay, so it's nice to share the stage with her, or on the same day. So the almond game. So as Benny mentioned, I've kind of traversed a few of these agricultural industries, a professional and a commercial arrangement. I'll give you the quick rundown, but at the risk of it sounding like a country music song, I'm going to try and keep it a little bit upbeat because it's actually been really challenging. So we started, and we were out of the blocks in July 2019 when I started. The business was about a year old. It had a mature orchard, and it had bought another one for greenfield. So year one was greenfield development, which went very, very well. And there was always also a strategic growth mandate. So come in as a growth CEO, triple the size of the business within over a period of time. We had the drought broke in April 20. There was obviously a lag with water pricing. So we did see those very high temp prices at the time, around that sort of $800 mark. And then what Kibis is an impact fund. So it's all about creating more with less, less inputs, and really sort of striving. And it's run in the UK. A guy, Rob Appleby, founded it. Terrific individual, and certainly a reason why I've sort of stayed the course. I think he is exceptional. So year two, we'd gone through the drought, probably concerns over at in the investment world on the growth strategy, so we parked it. So that was then kind of interesting because it was like, well, we've got 1,000 hectares under management here, greenfield going, but a shelf growth mandate. So a lot of my role was actually sort of shelved, and at that time I actually went part-time and did some things on my own, including going to business with the family. COVID hit. Border issues, so a lot of people living in Victoria working on the New South Wales orchard, vice versa. No one obviously can ever conceive that would be an issue, but quite a big logistical challenge, and obviously not being able to attend those that the businesses or on the ground was challenging too. Then we ended up going through quite a full DD process on the following an unsolicited bid on the business, and that time almond price went into free fall, and so a lot of you may or may not know about irrigated horticulture, but it's high input and it is high return, and so what we had was one of the big drivers obviously being price, coming down well after straight after the drought had broken. And so then you're really focusing hard on cash management. Damo's here, who really is the brains in the head office outfit, and our head office is here, him and I. So very, very thinly placed, and hence we go kind of right into the weeds all the way up through the back end of it. And then varroa might hit, which we'll go into, and then we've kind of ended up in this larger economic downturn, which sort of put off, again, sort of stalled external investment. The other thing was COVID wouldn't allow international investors to come in and actually view assets. And so, you could sort of, it's like, well, sort of the second false start. And then really what I am is an operating partner. I'm not a banker. I'm not an equity fundraiser. I'm the person that's accountable for the operations. So really, it was focusing very, very hard on our operations as we continue today. And those challenges essentially yielded a very, very significant focus on the controllables. What can we control? Yield, quality, hedging our water, all these sorts of things. And then today, we're still in a very, very deliberate cost focus. We have we've done some essential CapEx. We're looking at yield recovery. We're looking at price recovery. So we're kind of maybe coming to the back end of the chorus of the country music song where kind of the girl gets back with the guy and the dog comes back to life. But it's been challenging, but we're still in it, and that's agriculture.
No, thank you, James. And look, before we get to the crux of why we're here today, which is the biosecurity stuff, there's a lot of, I guess, financial services or professional services in the room, and you talk about being an operating partner. What's it like being an operating partner with a master that sits so far away from home or from your business, and what's the sort of split between driving that efficiency out of the business and keeping those people up to date and content?
Thanks. Good question. I couldn't do what I do today if I hadn't had done what I'd done before. So knowing the way a bank works is great because we run that relationship. Knowing how investors sort of think, and I should qualify that just with respect to ag, and then being able to traverse sort of back to the productive ag all the way down to I should say across really, because they're the key to everything is our people, right? So it's a highly mechanized function. It's very technological. There's a lot of work goes into producing that more with less. So not only do we have our managers on the ground, we've really Damo and I've really tried to invest in them and give them a scaffold with which to operate. And it's not. It's not straight off the bat that someone comes in and goes, there's an easy, or there's a way to do that. I think it's better, and it's going to involve that. So to your question, the stakeholder focus with respect to business versus board, etc. We don't have a business unless we're focusing on the business. So it always does come first. As far as the management overseas, so there's an investment director that sits in Sydney, and he's on the board as well as a couple of other Kibbers partners. We've had to build the trust, in terms of these guys have got this, particularly in a challenging style of environment. The emphasis comes on it's less. It's not so much please explain. It's can you tell me how we could do things differently, or are we on the cutting edge? I think the best thing about Kibbers is that they understand the difference between bad costs and good costs. And I was just having the chat just then, but when we're thinking about bad costs, that's a wastage cost. The good costs are those that are going to get you to next year or the year after. And in our game, what we're doing to the trees this year is actually all about setting up for next year. Okay, unlike an annual crop or something like that. So we're always thinking about what's going to happen next year. So a shocking year, you can't pull back. You've got to think about what's happening. So yes, they are very involved. We have rhythms was something we established very, very quickly. What rhythm works for you? When do we meet? Once a month, right? We'll send you. We pack once a month, out of budget submissions, etc., etc. So there's a very free flowing level of information. It's very formal, which we've deployed. But again, it was kind of how it was professionally. So I think our skill set, if he's traversed legal, accounting, banking, etc., and our ability to run at an operational level, it does seal the deal with respect to being able to manage stakeholders at every point in the supply chain, and we're very proud of that. That's although we push ourselves, we're our own worst critic, as Damo says, but and things don't always go right, but it works.
That's a great insight, James. And this next question is a little bit of a selfish one because I've got a client who's interested in the market dynamics of the almond industry. So speak slowly and clearly if you don't mind when you answer it. There is a fair bit of press at the moment around almond price or tree nut prices in general. Like they've come off some very, very high highs, and we're sort of hopefully, maybe depending on what you say, what your thoughts are, we might be at the bottom. Where do you think the almond price is over the next 6 to 12 months?
It's like a Kibbers board meeting.
Rob sent that one.
Rob sent that. Okay, so this is where it gets a bit more upbeat. So last 2 years, we've, globally, I think every operator's been running below cost of production. And the tapestry over in California, where 85% of the global almond production is, varies from large to very, very small. So there's a lot more family style farms as opposed to what we're used to here, which tends to be, institutional capital or strategic capital coming in and being able to frankly fund the OPEX gap, because it takes 7 years for these to grow, or 5 to break even. So you've got to have that OPEX gap, or that gap covered. So when things work against you on the price basis, and I think probably a lot of people in this room would have some association or understand how productive ag works back home, or friends that are on the land, you start to kind of reduce your inputs, and that offsets what the lack of sort of cash in the pocket is for third, fourth, however many generation almond grower in California. So it's a long way to say that there has been cutting. And so when I say what you do next year is all about setting the following year up, what we're looking at is potentially an impact on less inputs, potentially older trees being pulled out, not being replaced, although they do take some time to mature. But I think what we'll see now is a more sustained increase in price. So we're looking at, I'll put a number out there, we're sort of looking at $225 to $250 US dollars a pound, which kind of comes back to $7.50, $8 a kilo. Aussie assuming a steady currency pretty well, sort of as at today. So remember, they work in pounds, we work in kilos, but ultimately you've got to look at the two functions of it. So supply, COVID, supply chain impact, very large US crop in 2022 caused essentially a glut. We then had on the demand side, and I kind of look at this, or actually just before that, the ending stocks is probably a key number to look at. So whenever I look at a report, and it probably goes to grain as well and things, is you look at your stocks. So what are your ending stocks? And for the first time in a long time, we're looking at probably a 500 million pound, 200 million kilos of product left, which is about 1 to 1.5 months of volume. So that's of shipments, if you like, in the US. So that's come back to a quite a low level, and that's quite exciting. And then in that too, because the US have had their own challenges with insect damage, all that sort of stuff, there's a concern that a lot of that is actually relatively downgraded. So what we then have is the buyers overseas starting to take some more positions, be a bit more interested. But remember, there's two sides: there's supply and demand. What I wondered when I started here was, are almonds a discretionary commodity, or are they a staple commodity? Right, with grains and all that sort of stuff, staple. I think they're a discretionary commodity, which might be an oxymoron, but what we have seen is that there is genuine consumer choice when the chips are down. And even though it's it's an important food, it's in snack bars, it's in muesli, it's in ice cream, it's in milk, it's all these sorts of things. What it is fundamentally is it will be impacted when there's economic downturn, as we've seen. And so in its corner though is the health side of it. It does carry the health and wellness story. It's a good for me good scenario too, because you can drive your sustainability practices well in it. So, and then the other part of it, I know that when I lived in China, I threw these out all the time. China's consumption's this. Imagine if they did this, and everyone would be a billionaire. But so in the US, consumption 2.15 pounds a person. It's 1 kilo. The rest of the world together is half a pound, so 230 grams. So you go, oh, come on, you guys, get eating. I reckon I eat about that a day, because I'm so healthy. But, so you kind of go, 100 grams, like, God, yeah. So there are those stats that kind of point in the corner of, sustainable rise, economic recovery, global lending stocks, etc. So, Betty, I'm going to call it, we're on the up.
It's a great answer, James. A great answer. And so I had a feeling that your answers will be quite fulsome today. So we might even shorten a few of these questions up. Let's get straight into it. Like, so the varroa mite issue is a very interesting one. Like, if you only need to do a little bit of a Google search to find a whole bunch of different things on it, and one of them is probably not relevant today because we had that lovely big chunk of beef on there. But usually 1/3 of the plate of food that you eat is impacted by pollination. 65% of there's another one that says 65% of all ag, not necessarily entirely, but it's dependent in some form on pollination. And I think that they talk around somewhere around between $6 and $8 billion worth of Australian ag production is impacted directly by pollination. I've got my facts right. The big fella's nodding. That's good. So tell us about how this impacted your business, and where did it start and where did it finish?
I'll get a bit more punchy now. So June 2022, 2 months before pollination. So we pollinate at flowering, which is sort of that late July, early August. Varroa mite hit. What does that mean? Pollination is an input for us. So we don't have bees. We don't keep them. We run through a reputable broker who brokers those bees, and they come onto the farms. The impact was immediate because there was oh my goodness, what does this mean for our business? So we were, and then like the start of any crisis, it's you're trying to hold on to we clipped onto Monson's, who are a broker, and they've got to let us through how this was going to impact us. Now, fundamentally what the impact was that Victoria's border closed to New South Wales. Victoria tend to supplement the demand in Victoria for hives with New South Wales hives. So all said and done, there's a shortage in Victoria, and that continues today because New South Wales is still restricted, and it is where varroa mite is. It's not anywhere else, but today that border is still shut, and so depending on who you talk to, there is still a genuine shortage of pollination capacity with regard to hives, even if you include Queensland's contribution in Victoria. So today, it's still questionable as to where that's going to land.
And I didn't probably appreciate that border closure. So what's that meant for you from an operational point of view outside the hive issue? Have you had to do anything different with worker movements or anything like that?
Not worker movements. So there's essentially there's two zones. So there's a suppression zone and there's a management zone. The suppression zone is essentially Kempsey Central Coast, where the ground zero is, and the management zone is the rest of the state. It doesn't affect workers, but so to give you an idea, when it first hit, fortuitously we'd actually increased our hive requirements because the prior year the weather patterns we felt adversely influenced bee flight hours, which, believe it or not, we can monitor. So we felt more hives would be appropriate to counter the impact of another colder period, because bees don't like the cold, right? And so we did that, but what ended up happening was what we increased by, we essentially got scaled back, and those hives were directed to other operators who were severely impacted to the point where they had very few hives. So we were fortunate to have the hives we needed. What no one foresaw was the flood event that happened later that year that actually, and this is the thing, it's very hard to say the impact was this, because we had unbelievable flooding, in later that year, which caused that 30% yield backtrack for the whole industry. So then we loaded up again. But what the other impact, Benny, has been a very significant increase in hive costs in Victoria. So one orchard's in Victoria, one orchard's in New South Wales. New South Wales is fine. Victoria is the challenge.
And it was interesting watching as a sort of a third party, because it's a problem. We've got it under control. We don't have it under control. It's all panic stations, and then actually now we give up. And this came at a personal cost to myself. I've got a little farm at Narrabri, and my dad had one hive, and we had this great commercial relationship where I'd get honey from him. We were in it's a purple zone, isn't it? Is a purple zone
your zone?
Yeah.
I think you're in management.
Yeah. So we're in a zone where the hive had to be ended straight away. And for a crusty old farmer, that shook my dad up more than I'd seen him shook up over many things. But do you think the progression of the strategy, how did that look from an Amaretto point of view? And do you think the choice to live with rather than eradicate is the right solution?
Yeah. So if you go back to how it works, so June 2022 they were discovered. November last year, the National Management Control, which is essentially Commonwealth plus state plus industry, announced that they would go to a management. In essence, they could no longer foresee that they could eradicate it. So it had gone to about 18,000 square kilometres, the coverage, which was well beyond the ability for the technical team to cover. So that's the why. I think what's been interesting. So essentially, when control came in, it was euthanize any hives in the emergency zone, and then beekeepers could come and voluntarily push their hives forward for euthanasia, and these were people's businesses, right? So not everyone is a hobby beekeeper. There are people out there with genuinely large businesses to service the pollination industry and work off about 50-50 honey pollination. So we're talking about pollination, but at the moment, I think as was mentioned, $4.50 a kilo of honey is actually not great for these people. So they've kind of got a double whammy. They've got varroa and low honey prices. So it's well, what else is going to happen? So control, euthanize, management is now alcohol wash your bees every 16 weeks. If you're in the management zone, in the suppression zone, they're more rigorous. If you want to move your hives, you've got to test. You've got to advise within 7 days. You've got to then do a 48-hour check. So what to your point, what do I think about it? The change in strategy. Everything's gone back on the beekeeper's shoulders. Now, we're an input. We use pollination as an input. As I said, we're not beekeepers, so I'm coming at this from away from the coalface. But like anything, when it comes back onto the beekeeper, what in my view, what needs to be done is there needs to be more of a uniform and support structure around that scaffolding to help those individuals. So at the moment, there's a variety of ways they can run surveillance. We know the APVMA are still working on an organic strip, which would probably be the best because it doesn't risk contaminating beeswax and honey. So I think this is very much a moving factor. I hope if there's any aperists in here, you're going to tell me I'm wrong, but I feel that when it all goes back onto the actual productive agricultural point, that it does need to come back with some very good support and more of a uniform requirement, because otherwise people are just going to go out of business.
And I might just ask one more question before I hand over to the floor, so if you can get those questions ready. Really great description there, Jimmy, around the status to where we are now, who's wearing the brunt of managing this issue, how it's impacting businesses like yours which use it as an input. What do you see as the longer term problems or issues with varroa mite present in Australia?
So it's in New South Wales today. There's the Lower Murray is obviously a lot of horticulture on both sides of the river. So bees don't respect borders. and I think today, the fact that he's only in New South Wales is great, but I think we probably need to be prepared for it to enter Victoria, South Australia as well. I think Tasmania and Western Australia obviously have a more of a natural buffer there. The other point to make is the impact of the wild European honeybee. So those bees we kind of see in the garden things, because in other countries they've been almost completely wiped out. And so my understanding is DPI did some testing up at Ground Zero, so up near that Newcastle one, and varroa has infested the wild population. It's not known as to whether or not there's a temporary resistance, because they seem to be coping with it. And I am quoting someone I spoke to the other day about this. But if that's the case, how long will that last before there is a real impact on that really important creature? So I think looking at what's happened elsewhere, that's an impact, as well as kind of more. It going more geographically, but on a business case level, getting a uniform surveillance and all that sort of stuff, that ultimately it will increase costs. It sort of has to for the pollinators, as you said, Benny. There are so many industries relying on pollination. I think it's 35 industries. So we just won.
I've hogged enough of the microphone. Can I ask the room to put forward any questions they might have for James, and just please tell us who you are and questions only. Thank you.
Very good, James. It's Ben Mason from New Agriculture. It sounds like a bit of a travesty that all these costs are being pushed back onto the beekeepers, and if you could give a recommendation to industry or government or some kind of industry support or government support to maintain this obviously essential part of ag as well as nature.
Jeez, mate, tough on a Friday. Okay, I was just going to put my little disclaimer out there that I'm not a beekeeper. I'm a humble operating partner for an almond business, but I have my views, right? So like I said, so let's just dig in this a little bit. You can use miticide strips, you can use an alcohol wash, you can use all sorts of things. So if you're a beekeeper, depending on the scale, depending on what's available to you, because there are some very sophisticated, almost institutional sized beekeepers, and then there's the one down to Benny's dad, right? So all along that chain, it doesn't matter where the bee comes from. It still has the ability to carry that mite, and that mite needs to be managed. So without a better scaffolded supportive structure around, like I said, those organic strips which are in the process of being approved, where the kind of risk lies is that people take it into their own hands as to how to do it, and probably possibly at a higher risk to the bees and potentially themselves. Because this surveillance thing is real. You have to surveil your bees. And then on the other side as I mentioned, with a low honey price, which I believe is driven largely by a high import volume of honey. So a low Aussie honey price, increased pollination costs, ability to pass on pollination costs to users who've already had 30+% increases in costs as one of their inputs in a low price environment. You can sort of see it starts to squash down. I'm going to stop short of saying government should fund or levies should be charged or any of that sort of stuff, because I simply I'm not close enough to it. But I think from what I'm trying to do is kind of come at it logically, with a support around the whole industry, with what is such an important industry. Because I certainly didn't come into this job, out of the beef industry, and the first thing I thought of was, oh my gosh, we've got to really think about the bees. And probably nor did you come into lunch today, but these little critters are so important. Hope I've handled that all right, mate.
Thanks, James. Dennis Howard from The Land. You mentioned the wild honeybee varroa mite incursion into the wild honeybee population as well. They play a significant role in the pollination process, supplementing pollinated hives. How do you see that affecting pollination this year and years going forward?
Yeah, I think it's probably too early to tell because varroa is still, by and large, up in that northern area. It was found along the Lower Murray, but for us, if we were to rely only on the wild European honeybee, we wouldn't have very much of a result. So we don't think they actually do that much for almond pollination. An important factor in all of that is also having alternate feed available for them. So, you've got a monocrop there with a whole heap of flowers. Depending on who you are and where you are, the honeybees are kind of located where there is an abundance of food, and some of the food is actually, unavailable for them. So at this stage, I don't think so. But see, if you ask the canola crew or others, it might be a very different story. So it might be, if you're trying to get a kind of a view on that for the paper, I'd recommend asking a couple of the other guys around, like what the impact of their honeybee is, because I think almonds are a bit different because we really do import the lot, and we'd say that the absolute bulk of our yield is due to those placed hives, which obviously is a risk, right?
Thanks, James. Thanks for your time today. Ben, thanks for facilitating. John Marr, just questioning whether there's more a role to play for self-pollinating varieties like Shasta, given the situation.
Yep. Thanks, John. Good to see you. It's been a long time. I think so. So at the moment, our own, we've got we don't have self-pollinators, and there's kind of the self-pollinating. We run 3 varieties. The reason we run 3 varieties is because we have the main variety nonpareil, and we have the 2 what we call pollinators. So the bee goes to a pollinator and goes back to nonpareil basically, and vice versa, right? So that's the first. Then there's the other ones that John's mentioning, which is essentially the pollen being able to be shifted from tree to tree as a self-pollinator. So when you hear self-pollinator, there's kind of 2 varieties. One needs a bee, one doesn't. To your question, John, we've got a trial going on a number of varieties, and it really comes back to there's a consumer element here. What does it taste like? And also the business side of it. We've found that Shasta's a good yielding tree in the trial, and I think to your point, I know the US are already kind of a bit ahead here. But yes, self-pollinating varieties are certainly going to become more interesting, yeah.